said 145 pounds in high school, 5'10". I said, I went to Somerville, 5'10", 147, January 15th. I came home in May. 6 feet and 7 feet. You're so rigid about it. You're eating at the same time every day. You're going to bed at the same time. You're waking up. It's very sad story. She wants to bury her brother on Monday. Realistically, I got sick during basic training. Terminal illness. And he died. I called. I said, I'm living here.
Wanted to share something with you.
What's going on, baby?
Remember we were talking about the 6 to 10. I did prepare and send in the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Good.
I was shocked. I have to be honest with you. I was shocked how much time and work I put in on that.
I'm sorry.
What?
I said I'm restructuring the mortgage, we haven't returned bill, blah, blah, blah. He goes, he won, I'm going after the Catskills for the summer. I'll be back in August to sign the paper. Anyway, that's great. Yeah, it's nice to hear the old area.
All right. The meeting will please come to order. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meeting Act has been that on January 7th, 2026, a copy of the notice specifying the date, time, and location was posted on the bulletin board outside of Borough Hall, given to the clerk administrator, mailed, faxed, or emailed to the Courier News, and posted on the Borough website. If any member believes that this meeting is being held in violation of the Open Public Meeting Act, please state your view at this time. Hearing none, these proceedings are judicial in nature. Proper judicial decorum must and will be maintained. Only those items on the agenda will be commented on or questions responded to. Next item, roll call, please.
Chairman Adair.
Here.
Ed Allett.
Here.
Roberta Karpenitz.
Here.
Morgan McLaughlin. Rich O'Neill.
Here.
Brian Vidimski.
Here.
John Flores. Eric Alvarez, Stuart Daniels.
Would someone please move that the absences of Eric, John, and Stu be recorded as excused?
I'll move it.
Moved? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, roll call. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jason, what's the next? Minutes?
Yep. We have the minutes for June 17th, 2026.
I'll move them.
Moved, second, roll call, please.
Chairman Adair.
Yes.
Ed Allen.
Yes.
Roberta Karpinitz.
Yes.
Morgan McLaughlin.
Yes.
Rich O'Neill.
Yes.
Brian Vidimski.
Yes.
Resolutions? Good, we're all caught up? All right. Next item.
Next, we have the hearing 2025-018Z, Nan Realty Holdings LLC, 79 Route 206, Block 124, Lot 1.01.
Okay. This thing.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jason Tuval, attorney for the applicant. Good to see everybody again. So we're back on this project, 79 Route 206. At the last meeting, you heard testimony from our civil engineer, our architect, and our traffic engineer. So there were some comments that we received from the board. There were some comments that we received from the public, and we resubmitted plans for the board's consideration. Oh yeah, the hearing was also carried from the last time without further notice to the public. So we took those comments under consideration, and I think we've addressed everything that the board had asked us to look at in the public as well. So the first thing that the board brought up, and I think some members of the public as well, was the trash enclosure was on the exterior of the parking lot, and we were asked if we could move it underneath the building, have it screened a little bit better. So we did that. So that you'll hear in testimony. The other issue came about having a gate on the property so that after hours, when no employees were present, there couldn't be the possibility of somebody driving in and parking. So we've addressed that issue as well. Mr. Cole had asked in between meetings that we design the stormwater management so that when the board votes on the application, they'll know that the stormwater management was properly designed in accordance with the New Jersey rules and the borough's ordinance. We've done that. And then finally as well, we've also, I believe, have made some architectural modifications to the aesthetics of the building based on some comments that we heard as well. So we're going to go through those items. I don't think it'll take very long because we were pretty extensive the last time. So my goal, Mr. Chairman, is to recall Mr. Much, who is our civil engineer, have him go through some of the comments that I just discussed. Then I'll bring our traffic engineer planner, Mr. Seckler. He's done with traffic, but he will do his planning testimony and go through some of the aesthetic changes to the building, as well as putting on his proofs for the variance criteria that we have. But procedurally, let me just ask one question before we start. I did reach out to Ryan before this evening. He said there would be 7 members, but I believe we only have 6. Is that the case?
Yeah, we're a little short tonight.
Okay, so
Want to proceed?
let's proceed, but I would ask that before we conclude, maybe I'll consult with Cliff before we finish. But let's. I definitely think we should get started.
Okay.
What's that? Oh,
Sir, you remain, Mr. Much, you remain under, I hope I have that right. You remain under oath?
Yes.
All right, very good, sir.
oh, and just to be sure, everybody who's here, all 6 members are eligible, right? They were either present or read the transcripts on the last meeting. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Where we were. Exhibit was. Okay. All right, so the next exhibit that I have, I don't know if anyone else has it any different, would be A4 is the next exhibit I have in in my notes.
I believe that's correct. Do you have the exhibit list? That's what I thought, okay.
All right, great. All right, so Paul, as you're getting the exhibit up, just to reiterate, you're still under oath, you acknowledge that?
Yes, that's correct.
And your license is still current and in good standing as a civil engineer?
Yes.
Great, okay. So why don't we cover the changes that we made to the application based on the comments that we received both from the board and the public?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be generally brief as we stated this evening, just kind of summarizing some of the last tweaks that we made to the civil site plans based on the feedback we've gotten and certainly based on the comments from Mr. Cole on this application. So I'll just start with a brief summary of the updates that we've made. One of the pieces of commentary in the review letter was discussing some of the signage. We've located along the frontage of the site the location for a monument sign. Also on the architecturals, there's some generic wall signage provided. The signage regulations for this zone, the B6 zone, are pretty expansive. So anything that a typical self-storage operator would bring in would certainly be compliant. We've shown the location and general layout. We're going to fall well within the overall area's heights and things like that for this. But the intention is for a monument sign of the driveway, which is typical. It'll be much smaller and shorter than what's permitted. You're allowed a 30-foot pylon sign. It's not something that a typical self-storage operator would utilize here. So we've shown that on the plan just to ensure that the board understands where it's going to be. And you'll see some of the architectural renderings as we move through as well. Just to comment on that a little bit, 130 square feet, 30 feet is the size sign. Will be well below that. One of the big ticket items that I think is a benefit to everyone that we've heard from so far as the public, is that the trash enclosure went from sort of the northwest corner outside the building closest to the residential. We've now shifted that under the building, so it'll be fully screened and enclosed under the roof deck of the building. You'll see the architectural renderings. There are walls with some gaps, we'll call it, some screened gaps, but certainly something that no one will see or really even be able to hear the operations of that trash enclosure. Again, the self-storage use, it will not be for public use for that trash enclosure, so this is not a high-generating trash enclosure. And because of the ceiling, I was talking a little bit to Mr. Cole before the meeting, it's likely that you wouldn't do a normal-sized dumpster either. We'll either do a very small dumpster, or they can even do kind of the rollout cans in there just to handle some of the office stuff. So very, very low impactful operations for the trash enclosure in general. And now it's under the building and entirely hidden from the public. So I think that's a definite benefit coming out of the last meeting. In addition, there was a neighbor here at the previous meeting. He's actually elected not to come this evening. We provided him with the updated plans. He seems satisfied. He is building the Dunkin' Donuts to our west, or page left. He is going to be finished with his construction before we install the connection for our sanitary sewer pipe. And the sanitary sewer pipe previously ran into his lot and under where his proposed trash enclosure is. There's actually a manhole in the middle of his trash enclosure at the rear of the property. We have discussed with that neighbor to just move that connection point outside of his trash enclosure. It'll take a small area, and I can highlight it a little bit here. You can see this little hatched area back here. A small amendment to the easement that allows for our use there. The neighbor is open to that, and we'll coordinate that with him. But essentially, it just allows us to align our connection to the existing infrastructure outside of what will be his completed construction. So we're not disturbing brand new installed construction at that time. And also it prevents our need to get into his trash enclosure if there's ever an issue in that line. We're kind of entirely independent of his development at that point. So another positive item that came out of the meeting is just being able to talk with the neighbor, work with him, and come up with a solution that works. And he didn't feel he needed to come to the meeting to talk about it, which is, I think a sign in and of itself. We've upgraded the landscaping. I don't have the old rendering in front of me, but in general, there's plantings along the rear that we're looking at now. We've sort of replaced the trash enclosure with some additional trees just to kind of expand that buffer. The buffer is pretty expansive going to the neighbors already. There's a mature forest there that's going to remain. We're not tearing down any trees as part of this application. We're not allowed to. Everything that is undeveloped today is encumbered by DEP, so we're leaving all the existing mature trees. But what we did do is we made some upgrades along the frontage. We've added street trees. We've dressed up the foundation of the building in a more substantial way. So that corridor, as you come down Route 206, the aesthetics there will be certainly a great improvement over what's there today, but something that really complements the architecture, and you'll see that in some of the 3D renderings that our planner will be presenting this evening. One of the items that we talked about, and you've heard a little bit about already, is just gated entrances and exits for underneath the building, really for after hours to avoid any issues of kind of having a dark underbuilding. So we have gates provided for the ingress and egress in response to and coordination of one of the comments from Mr. Cole, is that we're looking for a way that, let's say there's a scenario where somebody comes after hours, no employees, they pull onto the site. Currently, we have the gate shown right at the edge. You'll see that on the architecturals. But that presents the issue of where do you go if you can't get in? So we talked a little bit about providing a K-turn and some pavement up front to allow that to happen. It just didn't feel like it fit with the aesthetics that we were going for. It's wasted pavement. So what we've explored and discussed already is just taking that gate and kind of extending it in up into just past the ADA parking space. So you won't be able to get to the rear units when that gate is down. There'll be essentially walls up so you can't get into the office and get under the building, but we'll leave that ADA space open so in those late night after hour employees can then, or after hour visits when there's no employees, you can pull into the ADA space and make your K-turn without having to back on Route 206. And we'll obviously coordinate that with your board professional, but the intention is there are no backing movements onto Route 206. That's the primary concern that we heard, the primary concern that we intend to address in totality. And finally, some of the more, the engineering nerdy side of things is that, you heard testimony from Mr. Cole last time that the Somerville's stormwater regulations are more stringent than what the DEP would require. So in the interim between the last meeting and this meeting, we have fully upgraded the stormwater management system to provide for the DEP regulations for a major development per the borough's code. So that includes an underground basin that will collect the roof runoff, infiltrate a portion of it into the ground, and then anything that's not infiltrated will be then discharged to the same location where it was being before into the side of the site and into the wetlands. So the good thing, again, just to reiterate on the stormwater management plan, we currently have a site that is paved parking area that flows untreated and undetained into the wetlands around the site. We are now replacing the vast majority of that pavement with clean roof runoff. That clean runoff is now going into a basin, which will reduce the overall volume and peak flow rates that are flowing to that wetland. So previously it was a benefit, and now it's kind of what I'll call a supercharged benefit for this site, because you're going to have detention, water quality treatment, and a lot of clean runoff going to that wetland where I'll call, there's now dirty runoff and kind of just undetained runoff going today. So there's some testing that needs to be done just to validate that the stormwater plan works, but all of that is a sort of a will comply with your board professional's letter. We'll do the testing if the board looks upon this application favorably, and we'll address all of the comments in the letter. There's nothing in there that we take any issue with, and we can comply with all of the comments in the engineering review letter as we move through this meeting. So with that, that's everything that I had direct, Jason.
Yeah, just to be clear too, anything that you haven't addressed in Mr. Cole's letter that's a technical comment, we will comply with?
Yes, absolutely.
And just to be clear, because we got a revised letter, that's Mr. Cole's letter dated June 25th, 2026, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, and then we also received today, this afternoon, the letter from the fire official.
Yes.
Can you just speak to that as well?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions. Well, I guess there was two comments in the letter. The first comment was dealing with the fact that we've identified that fire hydrant that's directly in front of the site. They concurred that another fire hydrant is not needed. It's in the perfect spot. They'll utilize that for that. And I believe there was a question about sprinkler systems in there. And we'll work with the fire department to make sure that we're complying with all of the sprinkler systems for the site as
Yeah,
well.
and I've been told by the architect that we'll comply with that request on the sprinkler system as well.
Excellent.
Okay, so I just wanted Mr. Much to address those items. So I think that's it. We touched upon the trash enclosure relocation, the gates, the additional landscaping, and the stormwater management design. So we were happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anybody from the board have any questions of Mr. Much's testimony?
I do. So can you go back to the flooding?
Yes.
In the last storm, Mike, what was the biggest storm that we had, what, 4 years ago?
Ida.
Ida, all right.
Yeah.
In Ida, based on the level that your parking lot is right now, how much of the land was underwater?
I think it was about 1.5 foot of water on the existing site. We're lowering in some spots to make sure that the flood storage works, but just to comment a little bit on Ida, the new stormwater rules that we have to comply with as part of this application were essentially written for the Ida situation. Like where the floodwaters went to Ida is basically where the maps have been rewritten. So our site will flood. We understand that. It's part of the process. We will have to do some flood proofing on the building. That is all within the purview of the NJDEP. We are required to and will obtain permits for everything we're doing on this site from the DEP for those new elevated IDA level stormwater, flood hazard regulations.
So if we have another Ida,
When we have another item.
when, we know it's coming, 2 feet of that property is gonna be totally underwater.
Yeah, plus or minus, and again, I don't have the exact grading plan, but plus or minus, previously, before they raised the flood levels, this site was mostly out of the flood. And then essentially the entire parking lot for Ida, after Ida for the new storm rules is now, of varying degrees of floodwaters. But yes, the site will flood as part of what the applicant has to do with the DEP. He has essentially 2 choices for this building. He can dry flood proof it, which means you put up some flood barriers in front of doors. He'll have an emergency action team that comes in when there's going to be a big storm like that and seals up the whole building. He also has the option here to wet flood proof portions of it as well. And he'll make those decisions as we work through with the DEP, but wet flood proofing means you just let the water come in and go out. So there's certain strategic areas you can do that to balance where you're gonna dry flood proof. But all things that we commonly run into with the DEP that will permit exactly what we're doing here. And that's why it's so unique here. We only can have a certain footprint. We gotta raise the rest above because you don't want the first floor entirely within the flood.
And go through the dry flood proofing again. I know you described that at the last meeting.
Yeah, so a lot of the times what we use for the dry flood proofing is it's essentially like a Lincoln log system. You put these posts on anywhere that there's an entrance on the site. So doors, entrances to storage units, and you essentially have these posts that fit together and hold the floodwaters back. I actually just did one that just got installed down in Wildwood for a Wawa that's in the flood down there. And what that does is just it prevents the floodwaters from getting into the areas of the building that can be penetrated by water. So it's doors, sometimes it's windows, sometimes fancier residential windows can withstand. But for something like this, we have the units and 2 or 3 door entrances that will have those essentially areas where you can stack up those Lincoln logs 3 feet to keep the floodwaters out of those vulnerable areas.
Okay, and then the first floor building part of it, that's gonna be concrete?
Yes.
And when the water comes up 2 feet on the property, it can't get into the concrete, but it can get into the door.
And that is a requirement that we'll have to show the DEP that anywhere outside of the building penetrations, the doors and things like that is built in a way that can withstand floodwaters. So it's a little bit more of a premium for the applicant, obviously, than just your traditional building, but it's something that we have to fully vet out with the NJDEP.
So tonight, is it up to us to say whether it's dry or wet? Or don't we have the approval to do that?
It's a use variance, so.
Okay,
The-
all right, that's fine, we can talk about that. Now, the trash enclosure, I think on previous testimony that you said that there's gonna be 2 people that are on site?
1 to 2, yeah.
1 to 2, all right. And you have this trash exposure there, but you're not gonna allow anybody to use it other than the office people.
Right.
And I can't imagine that one or two office people are gonna need a dumpster.
No, we totally agree with that, and it's the conversation we had with your engineer prior to this, is that, you know, we put a trash enclosure, because typically they're outside of the building, you want it to be aesthetic, but I would anticipate a use like this, especially as they work with the private hauler to do it under the building, we'll have rollout residential cans rather than a dumpster, because you're not gonna be able to lift the dumpster above the roof underneath this, and you just don't need it. We just want an aesthetic place to put, you know, the cans or whatever we're doing. And we also need to lock them up, just one last thing, because we don't want people coming in, moving their boxes and throwing all their stuff in. Like, that area is locked off from the public. So you need something, but I agree with you, a dumpster
Yeah.
is likely unnecessary.
And that's why we made it like really, really small. And like Paul was saying, it's just like you would take out your trash at your house. You just want to put it in an area that's just shielded so it's not exposed to the.
Okay. And then at night, when the office people leave and they lock up and the gate is down, there are no vehicles stored on the property overnight.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, I think we went over that the last time, but good point. That is correct.
Yeah, and there's no boat storage, RV storage, anything like that going on underneath the building. This is all interior to the building storage.
Yeah, Morgan's basically a building within the building. Okay, the 5,000 square foot ground floor, which mimics the diner essentially, and the bigger area of the footprint, which is elevated. And we haven't gotten to it yet with the architect, but I think there's gonna be blowout walls that the exterior 20,700 square foot building, that footprint needs to allow water into it.
Yes, and
Okay.
I can comment on that a bit as well, is that similarly to, you know, the building itself, when we have those exterior walls that we're doing for screening and aesthetics and to kind of enclose the underneath, there needs to be enough area, and it's a calculation we do with the DEP, and it's shown on our plans, that allows floodwaters to enter and exit the site, because you don't want the floodwaters to come in and not be able to get out. So they're kind of serving a dual purpose. They're an aesthetic feature of the architecture, but they also allow floodwaters to come in and leave the site. Because in a scenario like this, we can't build a solid wall, because this is a fluvial flood zone, and if we reduce the flood storage on our site, it makes flooding worse somewhere downstream. So we have to essentially accept all the floodwaters that were coming if there was nothing on this site, or really you can manage it against the diner, but you have to allow all the water that was coming before to come onto the site, which is why we have those gaps in the walls. I would anticipate here as well, you may have to put a couple of flood vents as well, just to make sure that we're complying with that calculation we do with the DEP.
So just throw this concept out. You get a lot of square footage here, you have a lot of stories that are going up. How about eliminating the first floor?
The first,
You only have 5,000 square feet compared to what?
20,000.
Yeah.
yeah, so the first floor, I mean, its primary function is obviously you need an office, you need an elevator, you need corridors to get there. And then just based on the codes that we have with the NJDEP, you can mimic what was there previously as far as the area when we're doing our calculations for flood storage. So there was some additional space there that we're utilizing.
But yet, when the water comes, you still have that footprint of 5,000 square feet.
Yeah, certainly, but that area is gonna fully comply with everything the DEP has on flood storage and regulations for this site.
Yeah, and you could build a retail establishment here of one story, like a Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. Like you could, it's not as if the first floor, that's what I was gonna ask Paul to kind of go off of what you were saying. The fact that we're doing this type of building here versus a shopping center or something like that is actually beneficial based on the line of questioning you're asking, because it allows for the flood waters to kind of go through, dissipate. It kind of leaves more room for the flood, correct?
Yeah, it's essentially anything that was built on this site would have the same, would be limited to the same footprint that we have. And then you would have to flood proof that if it was a retail use or anything else. So, you know, we're just trying to make the site viable for the applicant, and this is the footprint that we're permitted to have per all of the DEP regulations.
Yeah, and we're happy, like Mr. Cole was saying, when we have to finalize those items with the DEP that both Mike and Paul will have to deal with, to keep Mr. Cole in the loop on those items and make sure that he's on board with what we're submitting to DEP, and that's fine.
What do you mean by breakaway walls?
I didn't say breakaway walls, but there are no breakaway walls on this. No, so the walls that we have, the exterior of this building, and you'll see it in the architectures, is that there's solid walls that are just solid walls, and then there's gaps that both are aesthetic and allow for airflow, like you've seen in some of the comments in the letter, for being essentially a parking garage under this building, following those regulations, but also to allow flood water in and out. So there's no breakaway walls. The building will have to withstand all of the flood. We'll have to prove that to the DEP as part of this.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. With the gaps in the wall, maybe I misunderstood what you said, but you're permitting water to get into this building than to escape the building. Am I right so far?
Yes, the exterior. So we were talking about
Yeah.
dry and wet flood proofing, that center 5,000
Yeah.
square feet, separate conversation. You have to, for any of these aesthetic walls, we have two options. We
Yeah.
could just put the whole building on stilts and leave the bottom open. Obviously, we've talked about some security things. We want that to be enclosed. So then we just have to provide enough room to let the flood waters flow in and out.
If you've got storage on that first level, and the floodwaters come in, does Antilles T-set go down the river?
No, so everything will obviously, in an emergency like that, the doors will be locked, and then depending on how we do this, you'll either have floodproofing in front of the doors that doesn't allow the floodwaters in, or in certain portions it may flow in, but it's all designed to keep. Nothing is going to float down, I guess is what you're
Well,
getting.
yeah.
That's certainly not something that's permissible and not something that would be, allowed by the DEP to happen. And you'll have to have a team that when there is a flood or there is that large storm, they respond to it, set up the site for that type of thing.
Sometimes these floods come before we know it. We don't get a lot of warning. In fact, Ida was a prime example of that. We had no idea that was coming until it was here.
But like Paul said, the regs were designed or changed based on that storm.
Oh, I get that. I
Yeah.
understand the regs. I deal with regs, no
Yeah,
problem.
so-
I get it. But all I'm concerned about is if you've got storage down there, it's gonna get flooded. Where's it gonna go?
It's going to stay in the building. There
be
won't be
contained.
any open doors. There won't be anything that can flow in and out of the building that wouldn't be controlled. So,
So if
we're
anybody's-
not going to have things inside the storage units flowing out in a flood
That's
situation.
where I'm
That's
going.
certainly not what's going to happen.
So the occupant of that storage, that's their problem. It's not gonna leak into the town.
Yeah, and certainly anybody that leases here and the applicant is aware of the flooding risk, and they will be made aware of what happens if there is an Ida or something like that. Absolutely.
Because we had about 14 seconds notice on Ida, so there was no getting a team out.
Yeah, and certainly, and I know that this team will certainly operate this in an above board way.
Okay.
So legally, do you have to notify tell the tenants up front that if a flood comes in and your stuff gets damaged, it's your responsibility?
We certainly have to make them aware. I'm not privy to how the leases are written for these. That's just outside of my purview. But from the DEP regulations, not only for the parking that's below the flood, but anything that's going to be impacted by the floods, you would have to notify those people. Absolutely.
Counselor, what's the lease say?
I don't know if that's, I've never gotten into that issue. I have no idea what it would say. I have no idea what it would say.
Well, here's the issue. So
That's more of a business issue, I would say, than a land use issue, because you're really talking about liability, like who would pay for somebody's item if it got destroyed. I think that's more of like a liability issue. But I think what Paul was saying is that per the DEP, flood areas have to be signed appropriately. So if you rented your unit on the first floor, there have to be signs posted that say this floor in a flood may whatever. And so people would be put on notice, is my point.
So if you drove through Somerville after Ida, you would have thought that there was a bomb that went off.
You don't have to talk to me about Ida. I lost my house and 3 cars. I had to my whole life was changed. So you don't have to, the more we talk about Ida, the more I get a little upset about it. But yeah, I lost, yeah. So I know, I'm very much aware of it.
All right. So I don't know what you did with all your stuff, but many of our residents just put it right out on the curb. And the town was then responsible, or FEMA had to come in, and it was a mess. it took us a long time to clean up stuff. And what I'm concerned with is if we don't have to have something like that, because we know it's gonna come and it's gonna happen again. And we're already identifying that stuff probably will
but-
get wet and damp.
But what I would say to you is this, and speaking from experience on how I had to deal with losing couches and furniture and all these things that you're talking about. But my house, which was built in the 1950s that I was living in, did not have any of these floodproofing, dry floodproofing. It wasn't subject to any of these regulations that this project is going to be constructed to. So yeah, I had to rent a dumpster and put my stuff that was destroyed in a dumpster. I had to do that. But here, you have rules that are now contemplating these types of storms that my house didn't have, that was built, and I'm sure all these other homes that you're referencing, of course, didn't have either. So we're designing for that based on the DEP regulations. I understand the concern completely, but my point to you, back to you on that, is that all of Paul's testimony is basically saying, we're planning for that and designing for that.
I just want to mention,
But you're not floodproofing it.
No, that's not.
But we are
No,
floodproofing
what-
it, absolutely.
Yeah, what he's saying, and I'll summarize as a layperson and make sure I'm saying it right, and he could say it. The garage with the parking lot, water can get in there, and then water recedes when the flood goes down. That's what those openings in the walls are for. You let the water in so that you don't displace water to other properties, and then it goes out, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct.
so that's
it's essentially two different areas. It's the exterior, and then it's the interior.
So now you're
5,000.
talking about the 5,000 square feet on the first floor. So now we're talking about the interior space. That is what Paul is saying is flood-proofed. So that you have two options, like you said, dry flood-proof, which means the water doesn't go in, and wet flood-proof, which some of it gets in, correct? Just
Yes.
explain that again?
Yeah, so in strategic areas, and I'm just leaving this, so there's some flexibility as we work with the DEP on the floodproofing for this, but there's strategic areas in the building that doesn't necessarily need to be dry flood-proofed. I would anticipate we'll dry flood-proof the units. I don't know that for sure. We have to work with the DEP. There's certain approvals that we'll have to get from them. But the intention is the important spaces are dry flood-proofed, and areas where maybe there's a crawl space or something else, you can let water come in and out.
Yeah, and your question before to Michael, which was whether we have to decide this now, and Michael's response to you was it's a use variance, which meant you have more discretion here because it's a use variance application. So we could talk to the client about and we can take a break later. Maybe, as Paul indicated, we can dry flood-proof the specific areas that have the stored items so that water doesn't get into those areas.
I'd like to say something. I've been
Sure.
interrupted a couple of times, but
Sure.
I just want to remind the board that when it makes this determination, whatever it's going to be, that part of its charge under the MLUL is public safety, health, and welfare. And so, I understand what the applicant is presenting, and I certainly don't want to minimize what you went through personally. But I'm just saying, from a legal standpoint, the decision you make, nothing we're talking about here mitigates that duty that the board has. So that's my statement on it. I feel like we're getting away from that a little bit, and I don't want to. I mean, I'll let the applicant respond to what I said, but
And Morgan, to address some of your concerns, we're talking about, I think it's fair to say, less than 2 feet of water on the ground units. I think that's fair, Paul.
Yes.
Potential
that's-
flood.
That's correct.
I think that's a fair statement. It might be a little bit more because of flood hazard elevation. It might be 3 feet. But right now, the design has the first floor at grade. No steps, no nothing. To minimize the flood, you could put one step and do a ramp or something just to raise it a foot. So that the flood damage might be less than a foot as opposed to 2 feet. Obviously, you don't want steps moving stuff in, so that would,
Right.
I would say that would involve ramping, which may take a flood hazard area within the zone, so it might be a challenge from the DEP. But we're just talking a few feet here is what I'm gathering. We're not talking 8 feet. I think it's in the report. I might be wrong on that. It might be more like 3 or 4 feet a flood hazard versus,
The vast majority, as you get to sort of the corner closest to the wetlands,
Yeah.
it's closer to 2 feet. As you get to the corner that's farthest from the wetlands, it's more like 6 inches in the flood, so it varies over the course of it. But yeah, to Michael's point, it's gonna be about 2 feet of flood hazard area at some of the doors, and then we'll have to flood proof to a foot above that as well, as part of this. It's just that's part of the DEP regulations, is to go a foot above the design elevation.
So those 17 units that are on the first floor, those, they could have up to 2 feet of water in those units.
If the applicant made the decision to wet flood proof them, but I don't anticipate that's the direction we would go. The dry flood proofing in those kind of Lincoln Longs I talked about are not a very expensive thing. So I would anticipate, now we haven't talked to the DEP, that's why I'm being a little bit vague, like they're gonna have the
You are
ultimate,
being a little bit vague.
like,
yeah.
you know, on the
Hard to say.
ultimate decision will be coordination with the DEP. So we're gonna have a lot of review there. Now, my anticipation is that we will dry flood proof all of the storage units to not allow floodwaters in there. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, my client just indicated we'll dry flood proof
Yeah.
that first floor so that there's no water that gets in there.
That works for me.
Well, doesn't sound like a guarantee. I guess what I'm looking at is that, as Rich said, these terms come up pretty quick. It's human nature. You're gonna rely on somebody to make the call to say, hey, we're gonna get it. We just lost in the town of Somerville, for Public Works, we lost, what, $1 million worth of equipment.
Yep.
We had no idea that was coming that quickly, right? And the same thing could happen here. And I think the issue is that these 17 units, whether they get water in them or not, if there's a foot or 2 of water, you're gonna have mold. Next thing we're gonna see is your curb out on Route 206 filled with stuff, and you're gonna want the borough to take care of that stuff. That puts undue hardship on the boroughs.
All I would say to you to that, and I understand the point, is that would be the case with any use that you now develop in the flood. Any, if you had a store, if you had a restaurant, if you had, that would be applicable to anything. So, I mean, you're gonna build one-story buildings along 206 in the flood, and you're gonna have, that would apply to all of those. I mean, so we have a very small, the first floor is not all storage. There's obviously common areas, there's an office, there's things like that as well. So it's not, so out of that 5,000, it's not the whole 5,000.
We have
The-
17 units.
No, I understand, but I'm saying like square footage wise is what I'm saying. It's not significant. Whereas if you put a restaurant there, or if you put a retail store, you'd have the same issue. That's all, you'd have goods and things, materials that are also prone to flooding as well. It would, no matter what you put there, it's gonna flood. And that's why we've agreed to dry flood proof it.
Wouldn't it make more sense just to take those 17 units and put them upstairs or nowhere and not have to even have this flood proofing, not have to put the expense in? I'm not the businessman here that does the economics, but it seems to me.
I think you'd have to have the flood proofing regardless, because there'd have to be an entrance to the building there, because you'd still have to have a lobby, an elevator, you'd have to have the office down there, so you would still have those things there. You're just talking specifically about those 17 units?
Yeah,
Why would you have to have the office there?
Accessible to the,
Could it be on the second floor? It's elevator, handicap accessible. You have stairs.
I'd have to ask, I mean, it seems like we're picking at this, even though we're complying with all the DEP regulations and going above and beyond and agree to dry flood proof it, but if it's a concern of the board, we'll ask the client.
I don't think we're being picky with the DEP. The DEP has continually revised these things. I spent 44 years in the fire department, and I saw the DEP change a lot of things, yeah, and they based it on history. What just happened last week? Okay, we'll change the rules. So, I mean, it's just a.
No, I
matter of-
understand your planning,
Yeah.
I get it. We have the 100-year storm now every 5 years or 10 years. I
Well,
hear
it
you.
is a major issue in this municipality, so it is.
Okay, I hear you loud and clear. Let me speak to the client about it. Is that fair?
Yeah.
please.
Okay, is that fair, Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. O'Neill? Okay,
Yes, it is.
okay. Any other, oh, sorry, we spent a lot of time on the flood. Any other questions for Paul?
Anybody else have any questions of Mr. Munt? Anyone from the audience have any questions of the testimony just given? Questions on the testimony? Come forward. State your name, address, please.
Yep. Joe Pomar, 77 Washington Place. And so this is the time for questions,
Questions.
correct?
Questions about the testimony given by the witness.
Right. So is there a,
There'll be a time for comments.
yeah, understood,
No comments.
understood.
Okay.
Yeah. So so Paul, you were saying you haven't yet spoken to the DEP, is that correct?
We've had a pre-application meeting, but we have not made a formal submission, obviously we wanted to get through this process first.
So is there any chance that you would go to the DEP and they would say, this property floods and obviously we can't develop this use here?
We, as a firm, have extensive experience with the DEP and their permitting practices, especially with the new rules. So we've designed this site to comply, and we have a high level of confidence that they will approve the design as shown.
Have you or the applicant considered an environmental hazard in the event of floodwaters coming through 17 units there? Let's say somebody stores photographic chemicals in there or some other uses, because my home is 200 feet from the site here. So since we've had the impermeable liner put under the green seam, that wetlands area actually fills up, not even on an Ida-style storm, but it becomes a lake. And I'm concerned about if you had a flood like Ida, and you had a discharge of environmentally sensitive chemicals into that, what risk are we, the public?
Yeah, I mean, the leases for these types of uses don't allow for the storage of any environmentally sensitive or hazardous chemicals / materials. And again, we've talked about the dry flood proofing to prevent the water from getting in and out of there. So again, obviously the DEP is also focused on that sort of thing. So it'll be part of their review of the application as well.
Right. So reference was made to, I think the phrase was public safety, health, and welfare. And, my concern is that someone stores something in there unbeknownst to you all, and it basically impacts the neighborhood there. And I guess last question, Paul, did you, and I'm not sure if this is an appropriate question, Mike Prothero sent over the photographs that he referenced in the last meeting. Mike is a resident of Washington Place, showing the flooding at the site during Ida, and I'm wondering whether you had a chance to look at that, because it was a very robust flood. The 206 was closed exactly at your site, and the two photographs that Mike submitted show the property underwater, and I would say to a greater extent than 2 feet, just visually looking at it.
Yeah, I have not had the chance to review those photos, but the DEP rules that we are designing this site to are the latest and greatest and are in direct response to the elevations and flood hazard areas that were associated with Ida. So what I would say is that the DEP is looking forward and looking to prevent or develop lands responsibly with those flood elevations in mind, and this plan specifically is designed to comply with those regulations.
Okay, and then last question is to follow up on what Mr. O'Neill had said. Ida, as just one example, came upon very suddenly. So you have a crew that has to put the flood gates in place. But what happens if, in the case like Ida, it's 11 p.m., it's 12 p.m., and there hasn't been a good meteorological warning, and a lot of the flooding that occurred in Ida really occurred in the middle of the night?
Any use that goes here would have to deal with the same issue. It's not specific to this.
Right, but it wouldn't be 17 units, Jason,
It-
filled
sure-
with,
sure,
you
it
know,
could- it-
it
sure,
might
it-
be a diner with a kitchen.
Sure,
and a restaurant.
with food and perishable items and things like that. Or it could be with cooking oil and other things. So I guess my point to you is it's a B6 zone. Any use you put there is going to have to deal with these flood regulations, and we're complying with them.
Right. Okay, rather than debate that point, I just want to, make sure that we understand that what Mr. O'Neill said was a lot of these things happen without warning and at time of the night when people aren't around. When I woke up the morning after Ida, my house was on an island, and Washington Place was closed, so.
My goodness.
Anyway, thanks.
Anyone else have any questions of the testimony given by Mr. Mudge? Okay.
Okay, so our last witness is our professional planner, Matt Seckler, and I'll have Matt go through some of the architectural changes and then the planning testimony. Go
Would
through
you
the
please raise
go
your
through the
right hand?
planning testimony, do the
You solemnly swear that the
architecture first.
testimony you're about to give in this matter will be the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Matthew Seckler, that's S-E-C-K-L-E-R. I'm with Stonefield Engineering Design. Address is 92 Park Avenue in Rutherford, New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Sackler. Mr. Tuvell, your witness, sir.
Sure, I think we qualified you as a traffic engineer the last time, but we should qualify you as a professional planner. Can you just go through your
Correct.
qualifications as well?
Certainly. I have a master's in city and regional planning from Rutgers University as a planner. I have been testifying for over 6 years as a planner in the state of New Jersey and been accepted for over 75 boards in the state as a professional planner, including this board, I think, at least on one occasion.
Yes.
Okay, would the board accept Mr. Seckler?
Yes, we will.
Okay, so Matt, in preparation of this application, you visited the site and the surrounding area?
Yes, I have. I also reviewed all the plans that our office had prepared along with the architectural firm's plans as well. I also reviewed the master plan documents, the zoning ordinance, as well as obviously looked back at some old aerial photographs to get an understanding of what was on the site previously to my engagement on this project.
Okay, so why don't we speak to the changes made to the building first, and then we can get deeper into the planning testimony.
Certainly. And again, this is, I don't have, there, screen's back.
Yeah, we're up to A6.
A6, and I don't want to take any credit for what you'll see as these beautiful
I'm sorry,
renderings.
A5, I'm sorry. Yep,
This is A5.
yeah,
This is prepared by USA Architects. It's a set of images, and you'll see it includes both the floor plans or prospective potential floor plans for the site, along with some images showing the materials that are proposed, as well as I think there were some questions regarding some of the rooftop screenings. So again, we could kind of walk through that as well. The key aspect of this, again, I'm not the architect in the project, but I did want to highlight the enhanced visual environment aspect of the purposes of planning. So I do want to highlight really how this site will look well and function well. Both the site civil plan that you saw Mr. Mutch present in terms of the landscaping and that type of design, as well as obviously the building itself. Again, the first sheet is the floor plan that we must discuss, 17 units on the ground floor. And again, the remainder of the ground floor is, I would say, circulation space, elevator, lobby, toilet, and kind of that common area as well. Second sheet, this is a potential proposed floor plan of the second through fifth floor. Again, as you kind of notice, as was mentioned earlier, you have a small 5,000 square foot first floor, and then basically the building expands to its full limits on the floors above. Again, this is a representative mix of the type of units that would be proposed. Again, the final unit mix will likely be done closer to construction documents, as they work with kind of marketing teams to get an understanding of in the area, are people looking for more small units, large units, things of that nature. This is the rooftop, and again, not the architect, but I do want to highlight is the rooftop screening. Just to orientate everybody, the jug handle at Orlando is basically located on the right side of this page. That is where the rooftop equipment is located extensively. The residential community in Washington, that would be on the far left-hand corner of this page. So again, rooftop equipment is on the right side, furthest from the residential. And if I could figure out how to zoom in without screwing up too much. That was not where I wanted to go. But again, you'll see, the way that the rooftop is screened, any of the equipment has, obviously, blocking around it. But again, residents, they're all the way located on the far side of the building, so this is not an area they would see. It'd be more so if people are driving by on Route 206, and again, they'll see the screening now instead of any type of rooftop equipment. In terms of what people would see when driving by, I think I skipped a page, so nope, did not. What you see here, the top image is the front of the building, what you'd see from Route 206. As you can see, the entry here, that is the, obviously, the access to under the building. As was mentioned by Mr. Much, there would be a gate when the site is closed or when there's not someone in the office located interior to that access point. A couple other items that Mr. Much mentioned, the building mounted sign, you can see here, it says, it's a sign that says self-storage. It's about 55 square feet. Again, located on the Route 206 facade. There's no signage towards any of the residential community, obviously focused on the customers that will be driving by on Route 206. And then we have the monument sign, which, again, I will try to see if I could zoom in a little more. Monument sign itself, the actual text is about 5.5 square feet. It's 8.5 feet long and about 7.5 inches high. We just have it just says self-storage for now. Obviously, it would have a brand name in the future. But again, the key aspect here is this is a 5-foot high monument sign versus any type of huge pylon sign that is regularly permitted within the B6 zone. So again, we're trying to be modest with the signage that we're proposing. And again, just want to provide you that visual. The sign itself will match the materials of the building. In terms of the materials of the building, this area, and you'll see a little colorized version after this. These are metal panels that are meant to look like wood, so they're kind of wood-like looking, again, to try to soften the look of the building and the size of the building. All the exterior glazing here is opaque glass, so it would not be shining any lights that are inside, would not be shining out. Essentially helps break up the facade, but does not provide any type of glaring or anyone be able to see in or any of the lighting in the inside shining out. So in terms of at night, there's not going to be any type of glow from the inside of the building here. You'll see in a later image when we show the nighttime image of the building, you'll see that we've added some ground-mounted, building-mounted lighting. Building-mounted lighting on the ground floor level that kind of again shines down to provide a little bit more of a pedestrian look to the building itself. Just kind of now rotating the building. This is now the back of the building. What you see here, and I don't need AI to assist. What you see here is what Mr. Much mentioned in terms of the way that the ground floor building has some openings in it so that water can flow through in the areas where it's not an actual unit itself. You could also see that we've extended those materials, the undulating wood-like aluminum panels extend throughout the entire building. This is the rear. This is basically facing the wetlands and in the rear of the site. Sorry, just want to get to the next image. This has that nighttime and daytime look from Route 206. Again, this gives you a little bit more of a look of the building. Again, I don't know how well you guys can see it on the screens, but you could see that the aluminum paneling, again, has that kind of brownish, woodish look itself. The ground floor with the split block face, has both a texture to it, but also is meant to look kind of earthy, matching the building above, but also not providing anything of too showy of a color. And then on the bottom image, you could see the building, which would be quite attractive at night. Again, with the mix of lighting that shines up the building itself, and then the ground level lighting that is shining down, again, to provide a little bit more of that streetscape look along 206. As you can see in these images, just to remind everybody, that rooftop equipment, that's located basically behind where this sign is that says self-storage. And again, the Dunkin' Donuts is over here on the left-hand side of this image, and the residence on Washington would be kind of the back left corner of the page. And again, obviously, if there's more extensive architecture testimony here, we have architects here. I just wanted to show this in terms of how the fact that I find this both an attractive site, both from kind of the streetscape and the landscaping that's being proposed, as well as the building itself. I think it kind of fits in with the area in terms of the materials. Again, it's not too modern of a building, but again, uses modern techniques, I think, to provide a sleek-looking building here. Kind of getting a little bit more into the planning, and I'm going to roll back into the site plan here. I think one of the aspects of this application that we need to remember is that this site is extensively limited due to the fact that we are not only in the flood, but we also have the wetlands in the whole basically back right corner from a environmental perspective, but also from a zoning perspective. The actual buildable area, and
We're on A4 here, right, Matt?
A4, yes. And I know I'm going to screw this up again, so let me. The actual buildable area within the setbacks is this very small triangle that's about 1,500 square feet of buildable areas, this little triangle. So if we were going to build a site that's compliant with your setbacks, not only is it about 3/4 within a wetlands that we can't build, but also it's this very, very small triangle, basically requiring us to get C variances as it relates to setbacks. Your 150-foot front yard setback that's required as part of the zone, again, puts us into really a non-buildable area. As we go through the variances, a lot of the C variances kind of relate to the fact that we are dealing with a hardship because of the environmental constraints in the property, as well as, there being really no buildable area to construct in this property. Now, in terms of the use itself, because we are here seeking a use variance, as was mentioned, we are in the B6 zone. The B6 zone is a shopping center kind of commercial zone, so it does allow for a lot of uses that are a little more intense than what we're proposing here. Also, you are permitted some significant height in the zone. I think that is important aspect of this application to remember that this is, again, not a district that is intended to be passive. It's intended to generate traffic, to generate business. And again, I think we're trying to balance that with the difficulties that we have with the environmental constraints on this property. In terms of permitted uses in the B6 zone, offices, restaurants, hotels, health services, childcare centers, retail establishments, all of those things are permitted in with the zone. I also think it's interesting that public storage and warehousing is an accessory permitted use in the zone. So while we are not permitted in this zone as a principal use, it is recognized that kind of storage activities that are associated with a permitted principal use is allowed in the zone. So the idea of storing items is not, I would say, inherently against what the ordinance contemplated, but it is clearly not listed as a principal permitted use. We went through extensive testimony regarding the traffic that is generated by a site like this, and I would kind of remind the board that in terms of all those uses that I mentioned, the B6 zone, nearly all of them have double, triple, maybe 4 times the amount of traffic. Some of those uses generate more traffic in an hour than in the self-storage generates an entire day. I think that's important along 206, where obviously it is a heavy travel corridor. It can be very busy in terms of the amount of traffic, so being able to put in a use that kind of brings, that is a business and it's a use that brings revenue to the community, while also not multiplying the amount of traffic on the road, I think is important and beneficial. I'd also note that in terms of this site location, while our driveway has good sight distance coming in and out, kind of as you travel north, the road kind of kinks to the right as you get towards the next intersection. So you do have some difficulty with sight distance as you get closer to the intersection north of here, while those vehicles are backed up. So I do think it's an area where, while we have good sight distance, it is a corridor that is a little geometrically challenged in terms of providing proper sight distance further down the line. So again, not increasing the levels of traffic to high levels, I think, are very important. So again, when evaluating this site from a D1 perspective, we need to identify that there are special reasons, and with this application, as long as showing that there is this site is suitable, and we have to meet the threshold of site suitability. All that is outlined is within the Medici standard. One of the aspects of this application that we do think this site is particularly suited is the fact that there is unique geometry and unique physical and environmental constraints. As was mentioned, this is an application that really you're only allowed to have about 5,000 square foot of ground floor. So you have this nice big property, multiple acres in size. 1.67 acres, and really only 5,000 square feet can you put something on the ground floor. So you're really looking for uses if you want to maximize this property and its value in being 1.67 acres. You know, you really talk about building something above with a very short or small base. And, you know, honestly, self-storage is a use that actually works very well for that, because in your parking area can be covered. So if you are moving things in and out, it's weather protected during that time period. And again, the storage units don't care that they're on the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, because you have elevator access. And as was mentioned, climate controlled units in this building. So again, I do think this is a use that does well in a challenged lot like this, where you do have a smaller base and you could kind of maximize the size of the upper levels of the building. So I do think that is beneficial here. I'd also, again, highlight the fact that we are removing a little more than 5,000 square foot of impervious coverage as part of this project. It's about the size of a full court basketball court. Is now going to be grass, while previously it was pavement. So I do think that's important. And the fact that clearly the site has been constrained over the years, having been about a decade without any type of use on this property. It's gone from the diner to nothing for about a decade. So obviously it is challenged in terms of being able to find a use that is, you know, able to be developed on this property. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the environmental constraints and really the odd shape of developable property that you end up with when you kind of layer in the wetlands on this site. I'd also note, from a site suitability perspective, the proximity to the state highway. Obviously, this is a use that benefits from being on a heavily traveled roadway, but also is beneficial to the state highway in the fact that it does not add a lot of traffic to it. So I do think that is one of the characteristics that shows that the site is particularly suited. And again, as was mentioned earlier, a storage use and a building of this height is, I would say, contemplated within this district. Again, you could go up to 165 feet in height, or I believe about 72 feet, so under half the total height of the allowable building that is allowed. And again, as was mentioned earlier, based on the borough ordinance, public storage facilities is an accessory use. So again, while it's not explicitly permitted, it is generally contemplated to be allowed in this type of zone, meaning that it kind of fits in well, or it's compatible with nearby shopping center uses.
Can I'm sorry to interrupt you. I understand what you just said, but could you touch on the issue of reconciliation? Because,
we were
Getting
gonna
there.
we were gonna get there. Yeah.
all right, yeah, because you're going very fast, and
Yes.
I'm trying to keep up with you. So try to slow down just a little bit.
No,
Okay.
no problem. We'll go a little slower, and we'll touch upon, obviously, both the positive and the negative criteria.
All right, yeah,
I was
because
hoping-
reconciliation is also a requirement under Medici, and I haven't heard anything on it yet. I thought I missed it.
Nope, I haven't made it
We're
there
going
yet.
so fast. I'm like, oh, God, I was
All
going
right,
to ask
so
our planner about this.
we're gonna turn it down a notch,
Okay.
Cliff, and go a little
All right,
slower.
Thank you.
No problem.
So I try to get a lot of words in. The court reporter said that she gets paid by the page, so I'm trying to add the pages.
Everybody wants
you
to
say
watch.
that,
The USA is playing right now, so. All right, go ahead.
Tell Paul
Do you want me to do special
That's
reasons? or
already
negative?
lost. So
Go into the special reasons and then.
Okay, so I'll go into special reasons, then I'll go to the negative criteria and work through the two prongs related to the Medici
Thank you,
standard.
sir. Appreciate it.
No problem. So first, in terms of special reasons, I believe we meet special reasons from the purposes of zoning in terms of letter I, which is visual environment, promoting the visual environment. That was the reason why I shared those new images from the architect, is to show, again, the materials that are being utilized. These are high-class, high-level materials. This is, I would say somewhat unique. This is not your just standard box that you may see on a highway, and clearly not the type of self-storage buildings that were the first generation self-storage buildings, which were the one-story kind of, almost like barn type units where everything had a roll-up door.
Would you also agree that the landscaping that we're adding contributes to that as well?
Absolutely, and that's why we're looking at A4 right now, because again, we are enhancing the landscaping, both interior to the site, but also exterior. I think having a good street presence in this area of Route 206 is important, and providing the landscaping along the roadway, those street trees, I think is a vast improvement to this corridor here. I'd also believe that we are meeting purpose M, which is an efficient use of land. This does have an irregularly shaped developable area. And again, we are challenged with meeting the flood hazard regulations. And as we've kind of debated, we can use about 5,000 square foot of the first floor. Obviously, we'll be discussing with the applicant in terms of should there be units or can we remove some of the units on the first floor? But again, I believe it's an efficient use, finding a use that can maximize this property when you're really stuck with a footprint that's only 5,000 square feet on the first floor.
And just for the record, to be clear too, there's many things that make this property somewhat unique and constrained, right? So you have the overall shape of the property, right?
Yes,
You have somewhat of the geometry of the highway here.
correct.
You have the wetlands area.
Yes,
You have the flood issues, correct?
yes, the fill and elevations we need to hit.
Right. So there's many things that actually on this property that make it unique from a constraint perspective.
Correct.
Okay.
And then one last special reason would be purpose H, which is free flow of traffic. Again, I discussed for way too long in this application the traffic levels related to self-storage buildings. But again, I think having a use that is less intense from a traffic perspective than most B6 uses is a benefit to the free flow of traffic on the roadways. And we've already received a DOT letter of no interest. So we've kind of passed their threshold, and they agree that this is not a detriment from a traffic perspective.
And putting all the testimony from the architect and the engineer, and also from yourself as a traffic engineer, would you agree that purpose A is met, promoting the general welfare in a sense that the stormwater is improving, the aesthetics are improving, the complying with the flood rules, do all that contributes also to purpose A?
Correct.
Okay.
Now I want to go to the negative criteria because obviously we need to, as part of a Medici project standard, we need to satisfy both prongs of the negative criteria. One is no substantial detriment to the public good. So when I look at the public good, I kind of identify a number of criteria that I judge these projects on. First is the intensity of the project. Is it an over-intensification of the lot? And I do not think so. I think the fact that it is less intense from a traffic perspective, and I'll talk to you later about the noise perspective. So I do not believe this is a use that is overly intensive when you compare it to retail establishments, restaurants, office building, medical uses that can be allowed on this site. I believe this is, would be considered a sleepy use compared to a lot of the more intense uses that are allowed within this zone. I review jobs from a negative criteria perspective as it relates to traffic. Again, less traffic than the previous diner when it was in operation, less traffic than all of those uses I previously talked about. Noise. Again, this is a commercial zone. Commercial zones can have activity later on at night. You can have diners 24 hours. You can have restaurants. You could have certain medical uses that that have activity in the later hours of night at night because of emergency care. This is not an activity that has a high level of noise. We even worked obviously with the board and some of the members of the public to bring the trash enclosure under the building. We even discussed about not having a dumpster at all. So in terms of the noise you would hear, really is concentrated closer to Route 206. And again, this is generally a sleepy use when you would consider noise.
And also the fact that we're closing at 10 p.m., which is when the stricter noise regulations come into play. We're actually going to be closed at that time.
Yes, and gating the site. So you're talking about, even if you had a shopping center that everything was closed at night, you could have a couple hooligans in the back of the site hanging out at all hours of the night. We'll be gating our site. So in terms of noise implications to the neighbors, I believe that, we are probably in the lower end of a lot of commercial uses that would be allowed in this site. Lighting is another thing that I look at in terms of, is a use providing a substantial detriment to the public good? I think what you've noticed is that we've focused the lighting towards Route 206, providing both building lighting and kind of streetscape lighting, and interior to the building. Any lights inside would not be seen on the outside of the building because of the opaque materials that we're using to prevent any type of shining from our building out of the site itself. So again, from a lighting perspective, this is not a use that would have a substantial negative detriment to the public good. In addition, height and building scale. This is a building that is permitted in terms of the allowable height. This is a site that does sit a little bit further down. I think we're about 8 feet lower than Washington in terms of where our finished floor is, so almost about almost 1 story of our building is actually below the grade of the, nearest residential street. And I'll get into the residential aspect or the residential zone that's near us as part of the second prong, which is what I'm going to get into right now. The second prong is looking at if we are impairing the intent and purposes of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. And your master plan does speak specifically about protecting residential neighborhoods from encroachment of businesses. And I think a couple things to note here is that, one, we don't adjoin any residential zone. Actually, the Dunkin' Donuts lot is basically our nearest neighbor all the way around the north side of the site. Then there's the residential zone along Washington. So we don't have any, I'd say, immediate neighbors from a residential perspective. But clearly, we're about, less than 200 feet from that residential zone through that other property. And again, I would note that when you look at the activity within the building itself, where the access points are obviously on 206, not near the residential area. The parking is generally along the area that is the furthest from the residential community. In addition, as we noted, all the roof-mounted equipment is located as far from the residential area as possible. So again, knowing that this is a C6 zone, B6 zone, B6 zone, there obviously is the idea that this should be allowed to have some level of intensity, some level of activity, but we're trying to be as cognizant as possible and pull that away from the residential community up to our kind of northeast corner. So I do believe that we are not providing a detriment or damaging the goal as it related to the 2019 master plan, but actually enhancing it. And again, I'll just read that design goal itself. Improve the visual appearance of business areas while protecting residential neighborhoods from encroachment, and ensure improvements are made with respect to the architecture character of the borough. And I think we're really hitting that with here. We have enhanced architecture, so that's a check there. Not having an encroachment to the residential neighborhoods. We're in a business zone, so we're not encroaching that area. And improving the visual appearance of business areas, which I do think we are obviously improving a vacant site that's been vacant for 10 years. Another master plan goal was related to the local economy, encourage development and improvement of non-residential uses in designated areas. A strong business community is vital to the fiscal health of the borough. So again, a site that's been vacant for a decade, finding investment to it, finding the right type of use for it has taken a long time. But I do believe that this is a use that is compatible with this area, and we are advancing that master plan goal, not providing a substantial detriment. So I do believe we've met the second prong as related to that. Lastly, in terms of the zoning ordinance, we are, other than, there are some C variances that we're seeking as it relates to the buildable area on the lot because the triangle is so tiny here. I do think that generally we are providing much less impervious coverage than what is allowed. You're allowed to be 70% impervious. I think we're in like the mid-30s in terms of the percentage impervious coverage. So that's a clear benefit. So we're not really providing a detriment to the zone plan as it relates to that. And again, the B6 zone is a commercial zone that allows for and encourages activity intensity. And we're, I think, dialing it down from what's allowed there. So again, I believe that we're trying to balance, and I do think we're generally aligned with the goals of this business zone here. So overall, when I look at the use variance criteria in terms of the Medici standard, I do think that we are providing a site that is particularly well suited for this use. I think this is actually one of the uses that works best on this type of property. I don't think there's a substantial negative detriment to the general neighborhood, nor the zone plan or the master plan. So I do believe we meet the thresholds as it relates to what is required in the Medici standard.
Yeah, and Matt, just to go back to the reconciliation too, when the master plan was last looked at, or when the zoning ordinance was last looked at, the flood regulations, the stormwater regulations weren't what they are today, right? They've been, as the board has correctly pointed out, they've been evolving over the last several years.
And more so becoming more strict. So where some things may have been able to be built 7 or 8 years ago under different DEP regulations, it's become more strict, more challenging, and really trying to find a use that, I don't want to say you're grandfathered into the 5,000 square feet the diner had as a footprint, but that's basically all you got to work with on the site is that as a first floor. And it really provides a challenge when you're looking at shopping center type uses and you're stuck with a 5,000 square foot
Yeah,
piece.
and also, like, I think you pointed this out, and Paul did as well, Paul Much. The self-storage sort of product has evolved where what I think we were used to many years ago was, contractors pulling up their gate type thing, and this is more of a retail, climate-controlled, house. Put some of your home goods, put some of your office dry good materials. So the use itself has somewhat evolved as well.
Correct. Yes, it's been maturing kind of over time, and even the designs have changed. Again, this I think is a very attractive building. As I mentioned, first generation was non-climate controlled, roll-up units, contractor-like stuff that Mr. Tuvell was talking about. Then you saw a lot of, I would say, bland highway type sites where you just had like a box and it was just basically gray, and you saw into either real units or fake units from the outside of the highway. I think this is an enhancement over that kind of basic model, and this is an enhanced model.
All right, and as to the C variances that we've talked about, you believe that the positive criteria, the purposes of the MLUL that you cited for the D variances, I think it was A, I, M, and H, are all relevant and are all advanced by the C variances as well?
Correct, and I would just state kind of grouping a lot of these variances together because there are quite a number of them, again, because our developable area is a triangle that is so tiny. I think that we've designed the site to provide for the proper style and type of design for this type of use, meaning while we do have a parking variance, I believe we're providing the appropriate amount of parking. Additional parking would be additional impervious coverage, poor environmental design, and obviously push us potentially into areas of wetlands that you can't disturb. Items like the drive aisle widths or number of driveways, again, this is complying with DOT regulations and providing proper circulation. So I think kind of across the board, in terms of the lighting, the driveway design, the parking, all of that, we've kind of matched what is necessary kind of in the industry and to provide for a proper plan while really promoting all those purposes you said before. Again, not providing excess parking, instead providing enhanced landscaping. We're making that trade-off. I think it's the proper trade-off to make with a site like this. This is really a less intense type of use.
And then same question, the first prong of the negative criteria as it relates to the C variances, you don't see any substantial detriment to the public good, also based on the reasons you set forth earlier on the D variance proofs.
Correct. I agree. All those negative criteria would kind of, for the use, kind of carries over with all of those C variances. And again, I do think there's a benefit to where we've placed the building, pushing it closer to 206 as opposed to in the back where really our developable envelope is. That would be closer to the wetlands, closer to the residents, and this is really the best location for the building.
And because of that footprint that's very constrained, you believe that this, as to the C variances, there's no impairment to the zone plan or zone ordinance because essentially we couldn't build anything here if we didn't deviate from it in some respect.
Correct. I don't think that there's any, as of right, no C variance development that is possible at this site. Again, your developable envelope is this triangle that's located in the rear of the site, which the majority is actually in the wetlands where you can't build at all. So really, if we were to be held to a strict standard of the zoning ordinance, we would have no developable opportunity on this site.
All right, and so in your professional opinion, as to the C variances, the benefits of those would substantially outweigh any detriments?
That is correct.
Yeah, and we put on the proofs for them as if they weren't subsumed in the D variance, because I thought it's always a conservative thing to do, but there's also case law that they're subsumed in the D variance as well, and you would agree that if you looked at it that way, the C variances would also be justified?
Correct. I would be talking twice as long and twice as fast, but I would have said the same thing.
Okay.
That is a correct approach to the law. Please don't speak twice as fast.
All right, so that concludes my direct for Mr. Seckler. I appreciate everybody's patience and just letting us go through it, so thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Seckler?
And I will get back to the board if we take a break after Mr. Seckler's testimony on the
It's
issues
almost 8:30
that were
anyway.
brought up before, okay, I promise.
Yeah, just one quick question. Could you show me the picture of the back again that's going to face the residential neighborhood?
Well, so let me just clarify. I think that image is this image here. So the residential neighborhood is actually on this side of the building. So I'm going to flip over to it, but I wanted to kind of highlight, I believe that is the north or the top side. Let me go to image, sorry. It is. Oh, no, this has the opening, you're right. This is the side that would be closer to Washington. Now, they wouldn't see the whole thing because some of this building is kind of aligned with the, I guess, the Dunkin' Donuts and the shopping center portion of it.
Okay.
But again, I think one of the key is, things like windows, opportunity for lighting, that is not in the residential area.
Great, okay, thank you.
What'd you think of it, Rich?
Are we commenting now, or are we?
I was just,
A question.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the direction I was kind of going to the last meeting. I just don't want them to be impacted by this.
right. Anybody else from the board have any questions of Mr. Seckler?
Matt, I had a couple questions regarding aesthetics there, architectural. Is that for the architect? Is that-
If Matt can answer, we can. If not, I can ask the architect to come up. Either way. Shoot.
I had, on some of the elevations, it appears to be 3 openings, but on the floor plan, there's 2 openings. Is it 2 or 3? If you look on, there's 2 elevations that show openings that, I think it's only 2 open, right?
Michael, on which elevation?
Yeah.
And when you say openings, you mean on the ground floor?
I'm talking about the gated openings, openings. You
There's
have
2.
one,
There's only 2.
right.
Yeah, sorry if that was unclear, but yeah, only the one off 206 and then leaving in the rear.
There's one shown the proposed northern elevation, which,
I guess then if that's the case, then I think that's a mistake.
okay.
Yeah, just go back to the site plan, Matt. So if it doesn't match for some reason, Michael will fix it. But the 2 openings are, obviously, when you come in off 206 to the building, and then Matt, just show them in the back, and then right back there, that's it.
Adjacent to the Dunkin' Donuts.
Correct.
That's the 2 openings. Is
Correct,
one of those?
correct.
And the aesthetic, the difference is it just color between the elevations of the revisions on the facade?
No, I believe they're materials as well. Matt, just read over.
Yeah, I believe it was the material and the material itself and the wood-like look that were kind
I
of
see, so
adding.
it's the wood light
Yeah.
look.
Yes.
Okay, and the slight, okay, now I get it.
I think we also added some of the ground level, or the lighting along the ground
Right.
level, to kind of create a pedestrian look in the front of the
So
building.
the wood light is not, that's not in our package, right? That was changed?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That solves that confusion. I'm like, wood-like, maybe I missed it. And you're like, no, I didn't miss it. That was a change, to make it more wood-like. Okay.
Yeah, I think one of your comments in the letter was to soften it as much as possible, so
Right.
that's why we're trying to be responsive to that.
And the ceiling height elevations, we're gonna work that out with down the road in terms of 12 feet, 14 feet to the sprinkler heads?
Yeah, I think that would be worked out with the
That's good.
building department and and
That's
yourself.
gonna work out.
Yeah, but the height of the building would stay the same.
Anyone else on the board have any questions, Mr. Seckler? Anyone from the audience have any questions of this testimony just given by Mr. Seckler? Please state your name and address for the record, speak into the mic.
Yeah, hi, Joe Pomar, again, 77 Washington Place. And that was truly impressive. Matt, it was, you covered a lot of ground there.
In a lot of words.
But as you're, I guess we kind of, I think Jason and I addressed this at the last meeting, but the question I have is, as an architect or as a planner, it feels like it's a bit of a straw man argument to say we have this little triangle right now that we currently can build on, but we could build 165 feet high on that, right? So you know, isn't it true that you would be building basically a monolith at 265 feet? So my question to you is, Matt, as a planner, you're looking for a variance here. So rather than do the straw man, it feels like the argument that we could build 165 feet tall, which would be the tallest building probably in Raritan and Somerville. Why not, in a sense, come in here asking for more floor footprint, which you're asking for as part of your variance, right? You want to cover a bigger part of the site. But why not trade a little bit of that extra floor area for some height? In other words, why go 5? And I understand there's an economic reason to go 5 floors. So truly, as you're opining as to the detriments and the viability of this based on how you're looking at it, wouldn't it really be a better kind of aesthetic to go 3 floors, say, just to throw out an example?
So I guess, let me go through the zoning requirements or the allowable bulk standards in the zone. So the 15-story allowance is anything in the B6 zone. So if we were in, let's say, a imaginary rectangular property without any wetlands that went
Right.
very deep and wide,
Right.
you'd be able to go 15 stories high, just like you can
Yeah,
here.
we don't have a height variance.
Right.
There's no height variance.
Right. But you can only, but in this particular site,
We have that
you have a
triangle
little
versus,
triangle.
instead of
Yeah.
let's say a normal
Right.
box of some sort,
Right.
because of the shape of the property. In addition, this zone does not have any building coverage standard or FAR standard. So in terms of what could cover the ground, the zoning ordinance doesn't have any limitation. We're limited because of the flood, but if we were not in the flood, you'd be able to fit, as long as you're under 70% improvement coverage, you're good to go. Again, we're at 33.9%, so we are, again, less than half of what can be built in terms of improvement. Again, we are not afforded much more than that because we have wetlands and other restrictions on the
Right,
site.
right.
So we're kind of, again, we're not seeking height variance, and we're not able to fully effectuate our improvement level, which is how we kind of ended up with the building we have here. And as you mentioned, we're seeking side yard and rear yard and those setbacks because there's really no developable area. We went up some of the way, not all the way that's allowed. And we, again, we definitely need relief, but again, we're less than half of the improvement coverage that the zone allows.
But that's really my point, Matt. You have that improvement, height on a very tiny little footprint. So now we're asking for a variance here to make a larger footprint here, but in a perfect world, this isn't a perfect world. You said the site is, I think you used the word constrained, right? And it's constrained by wetlands, it's constrained by the topography, by the flooding. So I guess it's a point really, it's between really your opinion as a planner, and so really what I'm asking you is, as you assess is this a detriment, as you assess this request for a variance, doesn't it feel like you're being a little bit too robust in asking for 5 floors on top of asking for a greater footprint? Why couldn't there be, and we talked at the last meeting about the whole idea of a stepped volume, right? That was lower at the north end of the site, closer to the residences, and then climbed up. You could do almost 3 floors, 4 floors, 5 floors at the south end. And I guess my other question was that considered in the, since we had the last meeting?
Well, we're not going to testify on things that aren't being presented, but Matt, can you just give your opinion on the detriment again? Do you feel at all that there's a negative impact to the public good or substantial detriment to the public good here?
No, and especially because of the use that we're proposing. If we were proposing an office building of, let's say, 5 stories that we're going to generate a lot of traffic because you have a lot of people working there, I think that's when you may be looking at, hey, the bulk of the building is creating these other negative detriments that kind of go along with it. I think this is a use that while the building is large and beyond the allowable footprint because it's the tiny triangle, it is not one that brings with it the negative aspects of noise, traffic, the environmental constraints, things like that. So I think that that is why I think this use it works well here, and kind of because that extra square footage, that extra bulk does not kind of compound those negative aspects of the project.
But how about the visual
Well, again, I would say that I think this
for a
builds,
residential area?
well, this
Right.
is again a business zone and next to a business zone. There is, and again,
Yeah,
by no means, you are within
yeah.
200 feet of the property.
Right.
100%.
Right.
But, we are in a commercial district next to commercial districts, and you're beyond that. And I think that what we tried to do in the, the colorized images and things like that is to show, the landscaping that we're going to add on that side of the building, the intensity we're trying to pull away. And again, the residential zone, again, is not our neighbor, but, there's the parking lot, the Dunkin' Donuts, which you can't see here because it wasn't built at the time of this. That is what adjoins the vast majority of the building. Your building or your lot, again, is closer to the wetlands area where we can't develop at all on the property.
And, so, we're not going to belabor the point. I think I've made my point, and you've stated your opinion. And then the other, the north elevation still has one, it looks like it has one window, vertical window at the northwest corner of the property.
Let me get to it.
That one there, that strip window, the vertical.
Yeah, this is all the way at the front of the building, so if you're driving by on 206 North, you see a
Right.
strip of.
So is
And
that-
again, those are opaque windows, so. you wouldn't
Understood,
see-
but they're translucent, right? So a light inside would
No, they're opaque.
translate out.
They're opaque, both sides. Interior lighting will not be seen on the outside.
Right.
And there won't be any, hallway lighting or anything
So
like that shown.
it's a
Decorative feature.
It's a decorative feature of glass that's basically not translucent at all.
Correct.
Okay, got it. And we talked last about having the lights downlighting the facade, and it looked like when I saw the elevation, at night, there's some uplighting there.
I know we added downlighting at the ground level, so that's what these.
Yeah, the uplighting, I think, is just for along Route 206, Joe, for the
Got it.
plantings. But I think what you were talking about from the last meeting was along the residential side.
Yes.
That if there was any
Right.
lighting there, that would be downlit, cut-off fixture.
Right.
And we would, of course, stipulate to that. If it's not, I thought we did put that on the plan, but if we didn't, we would stipulate to that 100%.
Right, okay, got
So
it.
yeah, so you would not have this type of uplight on your side of the building.
Got it, okay. And then the last would be, I couldn't really see the detail of the containment feature of your mechanicals.
Oh.
But is it possible to design something that would be a noise enclosure? So if you fire, if the elevator mechanics are working.
What typically happens is they, I think we talked about this earlier, they have, the good news is it's closed at 10 o'clock. So the noise levels, which become more
Right.
stringent at night, it won't be used at 10 o'clock. But what they'll do is they'll design it, they'll measure the sound. If there's an issue, they'll then acoustically screen it.
Got
But they have to comply with DEP standards, Joe.
Right, okay, and, my neighbor was unable to be here, so he had a couple
That's
other
okay.
questions. But one of the things he asked is on the north, the Duncan end of the site.
Yeah, okay.
Is there any consideration given to a noise or light barrier? So basically, in other words, some sort of a wall
fence there.
that was on the property line right there.
So I do know and obviously Paul would know better, there is certain fencing that you can't use in DEP, in flood hazard areas because the water has to be able to pass through.
Right,
So obviously, we could look to work with the DEP and the engineer on if there is some sort of barrier we could provide in that area, but obviously we have to be cognizant of not running afoul
Yeah,
of the DEP.
And
but
I
the
get-
other, the advantage of doing that, and I'll put this in the form of a question, wouldn't the advantage of doing that be that those, we can see through the first floor through those grates?
No, you won't be able to.
No?
No, but I don't disagree that if we can put evergreens there or something that to give a little bit more screening, I think when you have a valid point, I'll tell you. And if we can do that, like Matt was saying, I think because of the flood, you're constrained to what you could put there. But if we can put like, you know, like 8-foot evergreens up that area,
Okay.
we could look into that.
I would
That's-
also
that's
say
fine.
that the art finished floor, and again, I don't know where your house physically sits, but I do know that Washington sits about 8 feet higher than our
Okay.
finished floor,
Yeah.
so it's possible that you'd be looking out almost on the second story if you had a clearer look as opposed to the ground floor with the
Right.
parking and circulation.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my neighbors, Myrna,
Yeah,
Samsky, and.
we can, if it's,
you know.
if it's doable, we'll look into it. I don't think the applicant would have any issue with that.
Okay, and so the last thing is just what I
Last item.
mentioned, which was we talked about at the last meeting. I thought it was something that Paul Swartz was going to address.
What's that?
Was, you know, the idea, and I'm going to, I don't know if I'm permitted to hold up a little sketch that I did.
Just try to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, this was the idea of a stepped volume, right? Matt, you know this.
The
You're an
pie,
architect.
Prepare
the
that,
wedding
sir?
cake style design.
The wedding, yeah,
Did you
wedding.
prepare that, sir?
I did, yeah. So,
I understand. You asked the question earlier.
yeah.
And we feel that, I think Matt had said this during his testimony, that we were responsive to the board comments regarding softening that facade, taking away windows, doing the lighting. So we feel that we were responsive to your comment in that regard.
Right. So what I said last time was that in the spirit of compromise, I wanted to say, as opposed to come in and say I'm against the thing, here's a possible other volumetric solution here. So I want to just throw that out because Matt, you and I started out asking, could we really build 165 feet tall here? Well, you could after a teeny off a little triangular footprint. So I'm just saying there is another volume exercise you could do that would take the volume down as it's north and closest to the residences.
I'm going to ask that your self-prepared exhibit be marked as, I'm going to assume, and you can tell me otherwise, but it should be exhibit 0 or O for objector 1 and should be accepted in evidence. I would like to see it, please.
Yeah, Cliff, I think he's not an architect, he's not an engineer.
No,
He
I
did-
understand,
he just
but
did
as a layperson, he can provide
He
it.
just did a drawing, but I think his point was, could you have done this? We responded that I think we did respond to it just in a different way. And if there's a difference of opinion, it is what it is.
Yeah, I understand, but I do think it's a potential hybrid solution. It's a potential compromise solution.
Well, that'll be up for the board to determine,
Yeah.
not you.
Do it.
I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying, I
sure.
understand. Why don't you please mark it as 01 and give it to the board secretary?
Sure. That's it for me, everybody.
Do you have other questions? Okay.
Anybody else from the audience have any questions?
Matt, I just had the one, I don't know if it's you or the architect on the, if the garage is considered a parking garage, the loading area, and it's enclosed, based on my read of the code, you're gonna have to have a backup power source for the mechanical ventilation. Is there any contemplations? Do we know if it's open or closed? Is there backup power required?
I've been told it's considered to be open. But obviously, whatever the construction official requires, we would have to comply with.
So it's open, so we don't need backup
correct.
power, so there's no generator being proposed?
Correct.
Since it's not driven by the UCC?
Correct.
Art, I've got one question.
Here, Rich.
And my Irish, it takes a while to gel. This building, would this be almost like a sound barrier between the residential neighborhoods and 206?
Again, I'm not an acoustical engineer, but I do know that physical walls help prevent noise from traveling, so I would imagine it would be, but I'm not an acoustical engineer. I've heard them testify, so that's
Okay.
that's the amount that I could provide.
But as a planner, it would act as a buffer that
I mean,
could,
it's a buffer from a visual perspective. It's a buffer from I would imagine, a noise perspective as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
all right, Mr. Chairman, could we take 5 or 10 just to go over the
10
issues
works for me.
that were raised earlier? I appreciate it. Thank you. 10 minutes? Okay. Thank you.
We're 10 minutes past our 8:15. Anyway,
So we off the record?
yeah.
Okay. Hold on. to talk to you for a second.
See, my battery's still high.
Kidding aside, it's like, I'm sitting here trying to keep up with him. I mean, I think he's satisfied with everything, but I mean, to be honest with you, I thought his presentation was not terrific, but I mean, maybe you did, I don't know.
I think it covers the basics.
Yeah, I think that's about it, but I mean, this is obviously more than the basics. This is it's a D1, so I just wanna make sure. That's why I finally just said to Val, it's like, slow this guy down. He's gotta touch the basics, just because he talks a lot doesn't mean that he's completing the proofs.
Right.
And who is the guy? If you would mind telling me, who's the fellow in the back?
He's the owner.
No. I mean, the guy who spoke up a couple of times a minute ago. That's the neighbor, right?
The guy that asked the question?
Yeah.
Neighbor, yes.
All right. I just, go ahead.
That was fast. This would be an awesome watch party place for. Oh, I was thinking the same thing. I mean, it seems like state of the art, this stuff.
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Did you say you were down in Princeton area? Is that your home?
Yes, it's where I grew up, and I live in Lawrenceville now, but my law office is in Princeton. Are you from Princeton?
I went to school there.
Where'd you go?
Princeton.
Princeton High School?
No, the college.
Oh, very familiar with the university.
Yeah, I like to go down there. It's like, it's a beautiful.
It's a beautiful place in the world.
Yeah. So the architect, Wallace House restoration here
Right.
is Annabelle. She's got a hyphenated name. She's a Princeton architect.
What year did you graduate from the university?
76.
Oh, that's not that long. I was gonna say, it's only 50 years. I have a lot of friends who are Princeton graduates. So 76 is, to me, not all that long ago. I mean, do you march in the P-Rate every year? He went to,
He's laughing. He's laughing to hear us say it wasn't that long ago. When did you graduate?
are we getting through, I mean, because I know you have some concerns and things. I know, I'm serious about this. That's why I had your thing put in evidence. But I mean, are there other things you need to discuss?
Well, I have my comments written down.
Right, no, you'll have that opportunity, of course. No, I want you to have that, but, I mean, some of the questions, I was trying to nudge you in the direction of asking questions and not making comments. And, please.
I think I've asked most of the questions.
All right, okay. Yes. that was a very difficult thing to do. Now, are you an architect? That's great. Right. No, I was concerned, and you probably heard what I said. I mean, he was going so fast that frankly, he should have been a little more. I felt he should slow down a little bit and be a little more. But that's all right. I mean, as long as the board is fully familiar with it, then I'm okay with it. But I wanted to make sure. I never like to have to ask the witness to be more succinct. I'm sorry? No, you're not keeping, listen, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. I just want to make sure that we're keeping it. Sometimes I have to be, you heard what I said at one point. I said you have to think about, the primary function of the MOUL is public safety, health, welfare, and morals. And I do think that they got a little too casual with it. So but I was going to say, but having said that, I have to always call the attention to anybody who, when the time comes, I mean, I was going to say, when you're going to have a chance to comment. So I mean, I want to make sure you know that too. So people sometimes come up and they don't realize that, you will get a chance to get up there and say, I like it or I don't like it, and why, and here's what I'm doing. But that's also when I wanted that item that you prepared over the objection of the applicant's attorney to be put in the record. All right. Right. Well, I mean, if you can object to that if you want to, I mean, that's up to you. I mean, I will say that under the rules, under the MLUL and under the local rules, the applicant retains the right to present its case as it sees fit. I mean, I do get, he did mention something at the outset, and that was acceptable to the board, but the applicant is always at liberty to present its case in its own, I mean, I've been doing this for 39 years, so I'm one of the, I'm chairman of the Municipal Land Use Law Drafting Committee, so I know the law fairly well. And I know that, the applicant has the right to make its case. I mean, if it wants to make a mistake, that's its prerogative. If it wants to do something else, that's its prerogative too. But, I mean, if you have concerns about it, put them on the record. I mean, well, no, if you do, that's up to you. No, I'm fine, I just, are we off the record?
Well, I know, that was for you, by the way, I had to look.
Yeah, Paul, just come up, just in case there's, like, we talk about this compromise and I screw up how it says.
You got it.
Oh, God. Matt?
Okay. Okay, let's resume,
Back on the record?
back on the record.
All right, because I know a month can't go by without you guys seeing me. So, and I know that would break your hearts if we didn't, so in all seriousness, we want to try to compromise and figure out this flood issue on the first floor.
Right.
So we looked at, when we were talking about this during the break, there is a way, we believe, and we have to look at it, we're not going to figure it out in the hallway, but there is a way to raise those units on the first floor out of the flood to get them above that 2 feet and still keep the building height the same.
Okay.
So we want to explore that, because I think that's the concern of the board, correct? Having those units in the flood, is that, I just want to get direction on that, just,
Yeah,
I don't,
It seems like that's the way, that's a concern of the board. And the other concern we only have 6 members.
Yeah, no, obviously that was the second point, but before we get into redesigning, that's the sort of, my take is the one issue that is kind of open. I'm not saying how you're voting on the application, but from this evening, the one issue that's still open is how we address those units in the flood. Is that fair?
Yes,
Is to me, yeah.
yes.
Okay, all right. No, I mean, we want to work with the board. We want to make sure that we're getting it right and that you're comfortable with the final design.
So
Also, the board is a little short, so I'm.
Yeah, I understand. Of course, that's fine.
those units are in the back, where they have roll-down doors, that you, from the, like, that parking area, you come into those units in the back there?
They do currently, yes.
Yeah, so is it possible to put roll-down flood doors? Because they do make those.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't personally used them in the past, but there's definitely, there's definitely a product out there that you could use.
I
Well-
mean, the doors, the man doors obviously will get planks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously we have to evaluate this,
Yeah.
but what we were sort of brainstorming on was not having those exterior doors
Right.
and raising the floor area up out of the flood. And if a couple get lost, they get lost, but if we can keep them, great. But the goal was to just raise all those units out of the flood so the board's concern is addressed. And then we could also come back with with recommendations on the flood proofing, if it's even necessary, based on what we're designing. And we would talk to Michael during that process as well.
Because what kind of utilities you have down on the ground
Well,
floor? Is it
I was
your
gonna
electrical
say.
service come in there?
Yeah, I mean, all the utilities come there and they'll obviously have to be designed in a way that complies with flood regulations.
You've also had some citizen testimony or citizen input, which you may want to certainly give consideration to as well.
Yeah, I think the only item that we'll address is we'll make sure that those lights on that side are cut off, just so it's clear on the plans.
Just
Okay.
making sure that it's brought to your attention because it has been discussed a couple of times already on the record.
Okay. Okay, so when would the next meeting be? Could we do the second meeting of August? Is that okay?
Yeah, we had talked about that.
So it's 26th?
We have 2 small residential applications, and you'd be number 3 on the
Yes.
agenda for that night.
I don't think so. But you have to be available.
I'm just gonna
26?
confirm.
Is it-
it's before that.
Yeah. You meet the first and third Wednesday, correct?
Right,
So it would be the 19th, I
The
see?
19th,
19th, yeah.
the 19th,
That'll be August 19th?
August 19th.
Matt, are you good, just in case? Okay, so let's do that.
Okay. So, you want to be carried to the 19th of August without notification?
Okay, so we're being carried without further notice, August 19th, 2026, 7 PM in this room?
Yes.
That is correct.
With no further notice, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been notified accordingly. The next meeting on this application will be August 19th at 7 PM in this location. There will be no further written notice.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay.
Look in there, chipping away.
Jason, any other business to come before the board?
We're on to discussion.
Okay, just something real quick, something we had talked about briefly at the last meeting. Morgan had brought it up. How about a hiatus in August for next year? Something to talk about for next year? It's too late to do it this year.
Yeah, we just scheduled something for August, so.
Yeah,
The first Wednesday in August, the board there's no applications, so,
we've got a lot of time to think.
subject to the chairman scheduling something, it appears that the board's off the first. So there's no meeting, subject to Art's concurrence on August 5th.
No meeting. So I'm thinking about for a hiatus for next year.
Right. Gotcha.
Take August or July, either one. I know at the Legion, we take July and
We
August.
meet again on the 15th, right?
Okay, no other business to come before the board? Someone like to move for adjournment?
I'll move it.
Second?
Move second, all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Carried.